Hey guys, very welcome to the Cloud Atlas webinar with Maurice from Cloud Atlas. My name is Waylon from exEquities. Can I just, by show of hands, see if everyone can hear me? Great. All right, fantastic. As you guys will see, there is a questions bar available. So after the webinar, we will be taking questions with regards to the Cloud Atlas AMI Real Estate exSA Exchange Traded Fund. Yo, that's a long one. That's a long one. I am going to hand over to Maurice, who is the CEO of Cloud Atlas, bringing you this fantastic opportunity to own your piece of property in Africa. How's it, Maurice? How are you?
Good, and you? Thanks, Waylon, for the introduction. So, just to start, we are running this IPO for an Africa exSA property fund. And, before this seminar, I came across an interesting chart which shows what the top 1% of people own as in terms of assets. And when you look at the top 1% and then the next 9%, a lot of them are invested, obviously, in stocks and equities, which having a platform like exEquities makes it easier for you to get that exposure. And then you've got them, as you sort of move down the chart, you've got something that's interesting and known as non-home real estate, which is then other properties that generate them income. Because income is one of those sure ways to guarantee that property is one of those sure ways to guarantee that you are going to create and generate wealth. I mean, even above inflation wealth, because as rent increases, it increases according to inflation and sometimes a little bit more. So you'll always be earning a lot more than inflation when you're invested in property. So if you look at that, let's follow the chart in terms of saying how quick, how do the wealthy sort of make their money? And before that, I'd like to start by giving you an overview of what our offering is. I've got a page here which has some Fed cook on it, but it's got literally what we're offering is a regional property portfolio with prime locations across the African continent. And this initial public offer runs until the 2nd of March, which means if you do invest even now, with your February salary, it still it can form part of your tax-free investments, and it will go into the new year. So you look at what we've put together is we've really searched for companies across Africa that have these properties in prime locations. And what we found on the stock markets was countries like Morocco, Botswana, Kenya, Mauritius, Egypt, Nigeria, and Mozambique. So to start it out, who is investing in this opportunity that you see? So on the first page, you'd see that the sources of capital that we have in Africa are North America is coming into our property market at quite a rapid pace. You've got the Middle East, which is a new one. They're looking for property opportunity across the African continent. You've got Asia. Asians love buying property across the world. Europe, Europe is quite a saturated market, so they're looking for new growth opportunities. And where does all of this growth come from is Africa, because we still have a lot of properties to put online. And so you'll find that a lot of people are investing in it for the long-term growth that it offers and also the stable and consistent income that property generally offers. But what's funny to see from this chart is that South Africa is the biggest investor in African exSA property. So I want to get you guys on the bandwagon and get you to start investing in property through this fund. So just to run through some of the dates, exEquities has put the IPO on their platform. It's available. It's running until next week, Friday. And then after that, we have a short period whereby we go and we literally acquire the stocks in these property companies. And then on Friday, the 16th of March, is going to be a listing event at the JSC at 9 a.m. And if you can make that, you have to come through and hear us blow the horn and let's blow it for Africa.
So I think that's a really great opportunity for anyone who has never been to the JSE, but if you want to come and have a look at what the blowing of the horn is all about, that is really great, and we will be sending out communications around that.
Okay, appreciate that. So to go into it, we've called this hashtag, as you'll see on Twitter and social media, own your own, in testament to the fact that you can now own a portion of Africa. So imagine if you were to own the next office park that's in Botswana, quite a rapidly growing country, very stable, high GDP per capita rates. And this is what we're then offering investors. So as a Africa exSA portfolio, our objective is to track the index which we've created, which has about 13 companies, and make this investment offering inclusive and available to everybody. So from as little as 50 Rand, you can get involved in what this property portfolio then has to offer. So looking at why you might want to get into it, why choose Africa versus, for example, the American property, global property, or Asian property, is that it's a pretty simple task, which could be even the end of my presentation. Africa has the youngest and fastest growing population in the world. So all of these people are going to need to be housed. They're going to need office place to work. And also generally they're going to need all of the industry that goes around such a large population is going to need property to house its goods, etc. So when you look at the population growth of Africa, and then coupled with that, we also expected to have one of the world's highest GDP rates as an entire region. I mean, there's even forecasts in one of the companies we invested in, Grit, which has operations in Mozambique, that with the discovery of gas in Mozambique, off the coast of Mozambique, there's a lot of real estate development. And we are expecting it to have GDP growth rates above 20%. So hopefully you put that money to good use and then actually develop that country into something that's amazing. I'm sure some of you have been there on holiday, and if you haven't, well, when you are on holiday there, be sure to check out the companies we invested in, because they have some resorts there. And you can go there and say, listen, I'm a shareholder here, if they give you trouble. So looking at that, a lot of foreign investors have come after this opportunity, and there have been funds that are being set up by the likes of Investec, Momentum, and Eris did a fund, and there's hundreds of millions of dollars that are going into property development across the African continent. So if you couple the population growth with the GDP growth within the opportunity and the infrastructure deficit in Africa, which is sitting at something like $9 billion per annum, you've got quite a good property portfolio that then also not only gives you that consistent income, but also gives you the ability to earn more through the NAV of the property portfolio, which is the value of the buildings. As an investor, you typically can never, there's no liquidity in terms of you being able to buy a building completely, and then if you want to sell a building the next day. So now the transferability of property is quite a difficult thing. So when it comes to our ETF, what we are doing is we're literally saying we've liquefied this property portfolio that I'll also run through in a moment. So a little bit more about us and about this offering. A lot of people do ask, here's some of the details. So it's going to be priced in rands, listed on the JSE. There's the ISIN number. The ticker code is going to be AMIRE or AMIRE for AMI Real Estate. The targeted expense ratio or total expense ratio is sitting at 0.75%. And a lot of people might say it's a little bit high, but to be honest, our management fee in there is 0.35%, which is less than half. And then it's custody fees in there that are a little bit higher. But as we sort of go through the year and as this thing becomes listed for a year, you'll see the TR come off a little bit, because we're trading in a few less countries than our existing ETF, which is the Big 50. And so the custody rates in these markets, particularly Egypt, is a lot lower. It's sitting more at 20 basis points. So you could see that TR come off to 60 basis points or even potentially 65 basis points around there. So looking at the pricing will be available daily, and then the liquidity of the units is something I want to explain, and I'll explain a little bit later in this presentation. So when we look at the historical performance of this index and the companies that are in there, they've been paying dividends that are close to 4.15%, and they've been growing at a rate of about 9.4% in Rand terms. So if you compare that to like a Divi fund or anything of the like, you might find that the rates that we're getting out of dividends are very similar to those other dividend indices that are out there in the market. So when it then comes to getting good exposure, solid return, and also good dividends, which can be reinvested also on the Easy Equities platform, this is sort of makes sense to have it in your portfolio. It adds a little bit of spice to the portfolio that you might have. So just a rundown of the 13 companies that are within the fund. To explain the index, it's an equally weighted index. So there's no sort of special rules around what we are putting into the index from a company's perspective. So unlike the Big 50, where we're adding companies that have that force diversification that are across different sectors, here, because we know we're in one sector, what we're doing is we're taking listed companies and we're literally just putting them in at an equal setting. So you'll see the countries that we're in. There's Botswana, there's Egypt. Now, a lot of people might say Egypt is a high weighting. I think it comes in at 38%. But if you look at the breakdown, we've got about 5 companies in Egypt within this. So it's not just one company in Egypt, but there's 5. And the reason for that is Egypt probably presents one of the growing opportunities here. They're building a whole new city. The Suez Canal just got 2 billion euros for revamp. So it's got a lot of opportunities there. Then we've got a company in Kenya, and then Morocco, which is being a darling in the African markets for the past couple of years in terms of it being able to run. And then we've got Grit Income Group, which adds a lot of diversity to our offering. So Grit is listed both on the JSE and also in Mauritius. So we'll be participating in the Mauritius listing. But what it does is it adds to the exposure of the country list here. So we've got Zambia because of Grit. Zambia is now in this property portfolio. Mozambique is now in this property portfolio. And also the resorts that they have and the malls that they have in Mauritius. And then there's a company there in Nigeria. So, as this thing trades, I think at the IPO is one of the easiest ways to participate in this offering. But if you find yourself maybe outside the IPO with a little bit extra and you want to buy, there's 2 mechanisms to buy. And I'll also use this to explain the Big 50, this whole chart. It looks a little bit complex, but it's quite simple when we break it down. So we've got, if you're buying on the secondary market, in other words, if you were to put in an order on Easy Equities, and for some of the users there who've bought at the Big 50, there was a period of time where they couldn't, or their shares kept saying pending. And that's because of one of 2 things, right? And I'll break that down. So on the JSE, we've got secondary market trading, which is your everyday buyer and seller meeting in the market, etc. Now, there's a certain amount of liquidity that can be done within the JSE trading for some of our products. And this is because it only relates to people that already hold units. So if you're an existing holder, you participated in the IPO, you are a holder of units, and then you can come into the market and sell. So new buyers then would have to buy from existing holders of the units. And so the volumes that we've seen in that is around 100,000 a day. So from time to time, you might find that it is there's no sellers in the market, whatever the case is, and us as then Cloud Atlas come in and we go and we create units in the market. So then that's where it comes when we're saying directly from us. So the brokers at Easy Equities would call us and say, look, we've got some clients, they want to buy some units, and we would go and would create units and then we'll put them into your accounts and then they would be traded. So that's the 2 mechanisms, and that we've now, I think, clarified the point of communication with the Easy Equities brokers. So if ever you want to buy, you shouldn't see a pending on our trades anymore. It should just go through quite automatically. Because when we then do the trade on the JSE and it crosses, the money we take and then we go into Africa and then we start investing in all of these companies that are in the indices. So that this liquidity chart applies to both the Big 50 and also the real estate fund that's coming through. So to participate in the IPO, I think there is Easy Equities on this page. We've got a link to the page. So if you go onto our website and you go AMI Real Estate IPO, and then you land on this page, which is seen on the screen. And if you click down, you will see the platforms where where the ETF is then available. And then, just going through the profile, again, it's on your own, and we want to build Africa together. So I'll do a quick rundown of the profiles we do have. There is also a sway that's available on the website and on the IPO page, etc. And it allows you then to see a gallery of some of the properties that you would be investing in. So it pops up really neatly. I think it's on about page 12. I don't think we can get it on this webinar, but it is there on our website, and then you can actually see what the properties look like that you'd be invested in. But this document, really I'll run through it because I don't want to take up too much time, but you can scroll through it. It gives you an indication of what are some of the companies in there. But I'll just go back, if you can go back to the previous slide. Turnstile Holdings has a few office parks or shopping centers like Milimani City in Botswana. And I'll tell you, it's quite an interesting one. I was in Botswana last year, and decided to stay over for the weekend and check out the Okavango Delta, which is quite a beautiful place. So I asked the driver, where can I go and get some, some camping gear? And he's like, let me take you to Milamani City. And we got there, and they've got literally all the shops that we have here. There was K-Wear, there was shops where you can get all of the stuff that you use. So Cape Union Mart was there as well. There was a Pick and Pay, if I'm not mistaken, there. So there was quite a few shops that were in this mall, and you could literally pick everything that you wanted. So this was testament to the fact for me that, look, the Africa property sector is going to be growing. And because of all of these communities around there, people that are smart at building malls, etc., are building malls that, number one, tenants want to stay in. They're building complexes that the local residents want to stay in, etc., and they're building parks for your expat community. So it's quite a nice overview in the sense that you are really tapping into the African growth and on a hard infrastructure point of view. So at any point, if you're invested in this fund, you can look at the property portfolio. If you travel into Africa, you'll probably see some of these properties that are listed there, and you can be like, hey, I'm a shareholder. So that's pretty much it. And then the rest of the property portfolios are there. So if you want to scroll through and see what the exciting opportunities are and what the names of the properties are, it's all in there. I'd also recommend if you go on the website and you check out the Sway, which is like an electronic presentation document. So it's there on the IPO page, and you can just scroll through that and see what the properties actually look like, what some of them look like.
So what I'll also do after the webinar is email the complete pack that you are looking at the moment, just so that you can go through everything that we've done. I'll also send you a link to the webinar itself, so if you have missed anything, you can just go and have a view of it.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So that's that. And again, it closes next week, Friday. So if you haven't got your subscriptions in, please get them in. Let other people know also that this opportunity is available. Own African property from as little as 50 Rand. I think we're targeting to list at around 50 Rand per unit. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Maurice? I see we've got a question. Do you have a country split of exposure between commercial, retail, and residential property of the ETF or underlying companies?
Yes, we do. So the mix between, we have in our fund fact sheet existing developments and new developments, and the split there is around 54, 46, etc. For existing properties and new developments. Underneath that, we then have a split of whether it's a commercial, it's a residential, it's an industrial, or it's a tourist or leisure sort of property. So that's something that we can make available because we have that underlying detail. But always check out the fund fact sheet. We'll publish it there.
Great. Any more questions? Fantastic. I will make the webinar available on our YouTube channel. I will also send everyone a list of the or this presentation, and you are welcome to peruse it at your own time. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to give us a shout at Easy Equities, and we will answer any questions you may have. You will also see the IPO is listed under new listings on the Easy Equities platform. There is no minimum, so go and prescribe some funds towards the ETF, and then we will allocate the holdings to you once it goes live on the JSE. We've got another question here. Is this a boutique investment?
Okay, so it is an ETF, so it's not boutique in the sense. It is a new kind of offering. So I would put it under sort of the spice, salt and spice view of the market.
Great, thank you so much. Maurice, it's always a pleasure to have you here at Easy Equities, helping us to understand your products, which is very exciting. I already own the other ETF. I'm going to prescribe some to this. Really build a really great diversified portfolio. I've got a small allocation to property, but I think I'm going to have some more allocation to property with this ETF. So thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Cool.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Maurice.
Bye.